Many years ago, there was an emperor who was so fond of new clothes that he spent all his money in dress. He did not trouble himself in the least about his soldiers, nor did he care to go either to the theater or the chase, except for the opportunities then afforded him for displaying his new clothes. He had a different suit for each hour of the day, and as of any other king or emperor, he is sitting in council, it was always said of him, "The emperor is sitting in his wardrobe." Time passed merrily in the large town which was his capital called New York. Strangers arrived every day at the court. One day 2 rogues, calling themselves weavers, made their appearance. They gave out that they knew how to weave stuffs of the most beautiful colors and elaborate patterns, the clothes manufactured from which should have the wonderful property of remaining invisible to everyone who was unfit for the office he held, or who was extraordinarily simple to character. These must indeed be splendid clothes, thought the emperor. Had I such a suit, I might at once find out who in my realm are unfit for their office and also be able to distinguish the wise from the foolish. This stuff must be woven for me. Yes, it must be done. The emperor sent a large sum of money to the rogue weavers so they could create a new set of invisible clothing for him. The weavers immediately set up 2 looms. The weavers seemed to be working, though in reality they did nothing at all. They asked for the most delicate silk and purest gold thread. They hid the silk and gold thread in their own knapsack. They continued their pretended work at the empty looms until late at night. "I should like to know how the weavers are getting on with my clothes," said the emperor to himself. After some little time had elapsed, he was however rather embarrassed when he remembered that a simpleton or one unfit for his office would be unable to see the clothes. To be sure, he thought he had nothing to risk in his own person, but yet he would prefer sending somebody else to bring him intelligence about the weavers and their work, before he troubled himself in the affair. So the faithful old minister went into the hall, where the rogue weavers were working with all their might at their empty looms. What can be the meaning of this, thought the old man. He was shocked. I cannot see any material on those empty looms. However, he did not express his thoughts aloud. The impostors requested him very courteously to be so good as to come nearer their looms, and then asked him whether the design pleased him and whether the colors were very beautiful, while at the same time pointing to the empty frames. The poor old minister looked and looked, but he could not discover anything on the looms. It was for a very good reason. There was nothing there. Is it possible that I am a simpleton? I have never thought so myself. Or am I unfit for my office? I will never confess that I could not see the fabric. Well, Mr. Minister, said one of the rogues, still pretending to work, you do not say whether the fabric pleases you. Oh, it is excellent, replied the old minister, looking at the loom through his spectacles. This pattern and the colors, yes, I will tell the emperor without delay how very beautiful they are. We shall be much obliged to you, said the impostors, and then they named the different colors and described the pattern of the pretended stuff. The old minister listened attentively to their words in order that he might repeat them to the emperor. The knaves then asked for more silk and gold, saying that it was necessary to complete what they had begun. However, they put all that they were given into more knapsacks and continued to work with as much apparent diligence as before at their empty looms. The emperor now sent another officer of his court to see how the men were getting on, and to ascertain whether the cloth would soon be ready. It was just the same with this gentleman as with the minister. He surveyed the looms on all sides, but could see nothing at all but the empty frames. Does not the stuff appear as beautiful to you as it did to my lord the minister? Asked the impostors of the emperor's second ambassador, at the same time making the same gestures as before and talking of the design and colors which were not there. I certainly am not stupid, thought the messenger. It must be that I am not fit for my good profitable office. That is very odd, however. No one shall know anything about it. And accordingly he praised the stuff he could not see and declared that he was delighted with both colors and patterns. Indeed, please your imperial majesty, said he to his sovereign when he returned, the cloth which the weavers are preparing is extraordinarily magnificent. The whole city was talking of the splendid cloth which the emperor had ordered to be woven at his own expense. And now the emperor himself wished to see the costly manufacture, while it was still in the loom, accompanied by a select number of officers of the court, among whom were the 2 honest men who had already admired the cloth. He went to the crafty impostors, who as soon as they were aware of the emperor's approach went on working more diligently than ever, although they still did not pass a single thread through the looms. Is not the work absolutely magnificent? Said the two officers of the crown already mentioned. If your majesty will only be pleased to look at it, what a splendid design! What glorious colors! And at the same time they pointed to the empty frames, for they imagined that everyone else could see this exquisite piece of workmanship. How is this possible? Said the emperor to himself, I can see nothing. This is indeed a terrible affair. Am I a simpleton or am I unfit to be an emperor? That would be the worst thing that could happen. Oh, the cloth is charming, said the emperor aloud. It has my complete approval. He smiled most graciously and looked closely at the empty looms, for on no account would he say that he could not see what two of the officers of his court had praised so much. All his retinue now strained their eyes hoping to discover something on the looms, but they could see nothing, just like everyone else. Nevertheless, they all exclaimed, "Oh, how beautiful!" and advised His Majesty to have some new clothes made from this splendid material for the approaching procession. The retinue cried out, "Magnificent, charming and excellent." Their voices resounded on all sides and everyone was uncommonly happy. The emperor shared in the general satisfaction and presented the impostors with royal order of knighthood, to be worn in their buttonholes, and the title of gentlemen weavers. The rogues sat up the whole of the night before the day on which the procession was to take place and had 16 lights burning so that everyone might see how anxious they were to finish the emperor's new suit. They pretended to roll the cloth off the looms and cut the air with their scissors and finally sewed with needles without any thread in them. They cried, "At last the emperor's new clothes are ready." And now the emperor, with all the grandees of his court, came to the weavers, and the rogues raised their arms, as if to the act of holding something up, saying, "Here are your majesty's trousers. Here is the scarf. Here is the mantle. The whole suit is as light as a cobweb. One might fancy one has nothing at all on, when dressed in it. That however is the virtue of this delicate cloth." "Yes, indeed," said all the courtiers, although not one of them could see anything of this exquisite manufacture. "If you imperial majesty will be graciously pleased to take off your clothes, we will fit on the new suit, in front of the looking glass." The emperor was accordingly undressed, and the rogues pretended to array him in his new suit, the emperor turning round, from side to side, before the looking glass. "How splendid His Majesty looks in his new clothes and how well they fit," everyone cried out. "What a design! What colors! These are indeed royal robes." "The parade can start when you are ready, your majesty," said the chief master of the ceremonies. "I am quite ready," answered the emperor. "Do my new clothes fit well?" asked the emperor, turning himself round again before the looking glass in order that he might appear to be examining his handsome suit. The lords of the bedchamber were beside themselves as they gave praise to the emperor's new clothes. So now the emperor walked at the head of the procession through the streets of his capital. All the people standing on the streets and those at the windows cried out, "Oh, how beautiful are our emperor's new clothes, and what a magnificent suit it is." There was talk in the crowd of how gracefully the mantle was and how the scarf was delicate and hang fashionable around the emperor's neck. No one would allow that they could not see these much admired clothes, because in doing so they would have declared themselves either a simpleton or unfit for their office. Certainly none of the emperor's various suits had ever made so great an impression as these invisible ones. There was a cry in the crowd of people in the street. A young man said in a loud and clear voice, "The emperor has nothing at all on except his underwear." "Listen to my son. He is not lying," exclaimed his father. What the father and son said was whispered from one person to another along the parade route until at last everyone in the audience cried out, "The emperor has nothing on except his underwear." The emperor was vexed, for he knew that the people were right, but he thought the procession must go on. He could not admit that he had been foolish and wrong, for was he not the emperor?